And the question here, if Mandela, 276 units, only worth $100,000, why would the trustee want two attorneys on board to represent him? And Harold Murphy was paid $150,000 for doing nothing for 8 months, and the attorney, Paul Mourad, became active on the case.
If people want to go to the website to see and get this information, they should be able to go and see.
You could go on the button on the players' pictures. You see the pictures of Harold Murphy and Hannibal King. You click on that picture, and you see the lawsuit that I have filed on the state court for malpractice against him and the trustee, Stephen Gray.
Did Judge Kenner know that the property was worth more than $100,000?
Judge Kenner clearly knew, because if you recall, Senator Owens, attorney Leonard Grewich, he did file on our behalf an offer to the court called Mourad Owens offer for $5.5 million, and the property should be sold to us, and we should take it back. And Judge Kenner sat on that one for 8 months, and she did not respond. And then they had a problem with that offer, and you were my partner then, Senator Owen, because now they brought the value up from $100,000. They have to deal with $5.5 million on the table, and an appraisal value from Frank Petrosky, who was part of the court record, they paid him for it, of $12 million. So now the deal is gone. He cannot sneak it through.
If the property is appraised by one group for $12 million and another group for $100,000, does that pose some kind of, what does that tell you?
That tells me Stephen Gray was going to have a party time with his friends, Beacon Residential Property, to take the property eventually for $100,000. And if they have done that, then they would have satisfied the agenda of the governmental entities, because then the property will be auctioned. That was his first option. And that means in 1996, the Section 8 has expired. I had a 15-year contract. The property goes into foreclosure, will be a violation of the 121A agreement, and that's the only exception to the agreement. The property becomes private. Then they go ahead and condo it, and they make a killing. The average condo units in that area today, from $100,000 to $400,000. Mandela today in a condo conversion is worth $50 million.
Repeat that figure. Okay, the trustee said, in what year was that the property was worth $100,000?
In 1996, January, in the month of January.
In 1996, the trustee at the federal bankruptcy court said the property was worth $100,000. But you're stating today that the property is worth how much?
$50 million in the condo conversion. $50 million.
Something doesn't sound right there. Was the federal judge, Carol Kenner, aware of what statements you're making right now?
She was aware all along, because she understood the sole shareholder of V&M Management, who owned the 276 units, had nothing but money, because I had an obligation, which I personally signed, on all the notes to the Winter Hill Bank and to the utilities, everyone, in excess of $5 million. I'm personally liable, and I was able to bring additional, after $5.5 million, a long-term commitment letter for $9 million. So that was on the court record. I had nothing but money. But Kenner has no interest of Al Mourad to be brought back into his ownership. Harold Murphy made it clear to me, they want you out, go look for a job, and don't even think going back and taking over Mandela. It's over, Al.
I have a paper here from the Board of Bar Overseers that I'd like to read to you, Mr. Mourad. It said, it does from the Board of Bar Overseers, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Board of the Bar Overseers of the Supreme Judicial Court at 75 Federal Street, Boston, Massachusetts. It says, your allegations that Attorney Murphy did not disclose to you that his firm represented Mr. Gray in other prior or pending matters cannot be substantiated with the degree and certainty of evidence necessary for a successful prosecution. It does appear that Trustee Gray filed two false or at least grossly inaccurate disclosure statements with the bankruptcy court. Did the judge do anything about that after this came from the Board of Bar Overseers?
Absolutely not. I filed a motion, not only me, also 8 other creditors filed a motion for Stephen Gray to return his fee and Harold Murphy to return his fee for them not to be paid because there is perjury and a conflict of interest has taken place in the bankruptcy court. In fact, there was a similar case from the same judge, Carol Kenner, an attorney by the name Neil Stern, that for not disclosing the conflict of interest, she disbarred him out of the bankruptcy court. And she should have done the same thing to Harold Murphy from Hennepin King, and the trustee, Stephen Gray, should have been disbarred as a trustee for life, not to ever be a trustee in the federal bankruptcy court. She covered up for him.
I have here also, just as you mentioned, a motion. It's a joint, it's before the United States Bankruptcy Court, District of Massachusetts. It says joint emergency motion of creditors and parties at interest for an emergency stay and for relief from and to revoke the September 26, 1997 order confirming the reorganization plan and to retroactively remove Stephen Gray and to vacate the September 19, 1997 order allowing fees to Gray and to Hennepin King and order these fees returned for the serious breach and undisclosed conflict of interest in having attorney Harold Murphy and Hennepin King simultaneously represent Stephen Gray in a Rhode Island bankruptcy while Murphy was still counsel to the debtor, V&M Management, in this proceeding. Does that sound very convoluted to you?
Absolutely.
But before you answer that, I want to let everyone know that this was signed by 3 attorneys: Victor Aronow, Alphonse Simon, and Noah Simon. It was signed by Arthur Goldsmith, attorney. It was signed by Gary Leroy, attorney, and 7 other creditors, as I count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 9 creditors. All of these people signed this, and the judge then refused to overturn that.
That's correct.
Is there a reason for that?
Well, it's too late. She has made a decision. She has to deliver Mandela to the governmental entities, and her herself committed perjury on the complaint I filed on her for recusal. The fact is she lied to the Judicial Committee that she had no knowledge of conflict of Stephen Gray and Harold Murphy. In the meantime, as I said before, I filed bankruptcy on April 1996, April 2nd, and they were both in front of her on April the 11th. So how poor her memory is. Well, Harold Murphy, he's one of the top bankruptcy attorney in the city of Boston. Also, he was a former clerk of the bankruptcy court. And here she's saying she had no knowledge. So clearly she committed perjury herself.